Hi, everybody, and welcome to my video podcast of the Baseball Beat, which you can also subscribe to in all of the major podcast directories. I do an audio version and I do a video version. And the subject today is the late, great Bob Feller, arguably the greatest Cleveland Indian of them all. And I have to tell you, it is by sheer coincidence that I chose Bob Feller as this subject just a day after the New York Times broke the story that the Cleveland Indians are going to do away with their nickname, the Indians. They're going to do away with that name. And I'm not going to get into the reasons behind that. It's just by a mere coincidence. The reason I chose Bob Feller was because we are coming up on the 10th anniversary of his passing. Bob Feller died on December 15th, 2010, and he was one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Bob Feller, after his playing days, would tour the various minor league ballparks, and I caught up with him in 1983 when I was broadcasting games for the Toronto Blue Jays Single-A affiliate in the Carolina League, the Kinston Blue Jays. And he was brought in because he was a draw. People would come out and see the great Bob Feller. He would throw batting practice, mingle with the fans, and would interact with the media. And he graciously gave me an interview before a ball game, and I'm going to play that interview now. But a couple of things to think about in this interview. He talks about his durability. 1 year, he pitched 36 complete games. Not started 36 games. He completed 36 games. Incredible. We get into that. We get into his no-hitters. We talk about how he pitched to Joe DiMaggio, how he pitched to Ted Williams. Talked about his service to his country. He was a proud patriot and would have won more games had his career and the careers of so many other big league players not been interrupted by World War II, and in some cases also the Korean War. But we get into all of that in the interview I did with Bob Feller 37 years ago in the summer of 1983.
My guest on the pregame show tonight is Baseball Hall of Famer Bob Feller, one of the outstanding pitchers ever. Bob, what goes through your mind when people say, here is Bob Feller, one of the greatest pitchers of all time?
Well, I think it's a great compliment. I certainly enjoyed my career with the Indians from 1936 to 1956. Of course, I took 4 years off for World War II. I missed 42, 3, 4, and almost all of 1945, but I certainly have no regrets that we won the war, and I continued my career until 1956 after the war was concluded, of course, successfully. And, of course, a lot of the records that I would have had a shot to shoot at in all categories, strikeouts and maybe no-hit games and low-hit games and one-hit games, and I naturally missed. Of course, I really think that Warren Spahn would have been able to win 400 games had it been for World War II. I also think that, of course, Grover Cleveland Alexander missed a year and a half. He'd have made 400. Along with Walter Johnson. Of course, Cy Young had over 500. And I think that if there had been a fifth one in there, I'd have had a shot at 400. Don't say what I've been in. But I think I could have hung in there 2 or 3, 4 more years. I quit when I was 37. I was throwing pretty good. I knew that I wasn't going to be pitching much because Al Lopez was not using me after 1954. In fact, I didn't even pitch in the World Series after having won 13 and lost 3. But I had a great career. No regrets, and have a lot of fun visiting a minor league park and seeing all the fans.
At the age of 17, you were pitching in the major leagues. What was going through your mind, a teenager now pitching against major league personnel?
Well, it was kind of a shock to me because I had been reading all about these fellows just a year before when I was a kid on the farm in Iowa playing American Legion baseball in high school, of course, and a little semi-pro ball around Des Moines. I was playing on about 3 or 4 different teams and trying to get a little farming in occasionally, milking the cows and working in the fields, which was very good for my stamina. It kept me in great condition I could go the 9 innings and never get tired, and even go well beyond that on a hot day. And in fact, I'm the only pitcher since the live ball that pitched through 36 complete games or more. I pitched 30 through in 1946, and that hadn't been done since before the live ball, which was before World War I.
Did that take a toll on your arm? How did it affect your career, throwing all those complete games?
I don't think it had any effect at all. I don't think that there's such a thing as only so many pitches in a pitcher's arm. I think that's a matter of if you take good care of yourself, which I did, no smoking, no drinking, and go to bed early and get my rest and eat decent meals and work hard physically, and naturally you're going to deteriorate. But I don't think it's. I think it's age, and not the number of pitches you throw. If you take good care of yourself and don't throw too many, and if your arm hurts or if you have an injury, to take care of it, which I did, of course. And I had very few injuries. I was only ever really had one injury, which was 1937. I missed half a season with a bad elbow when I slipped on a muddy day one day and throwing a curveball, and did tear some of the ligaments around my ulnar bone and in the elbow.
You have 3 no-hitters to your credit, Bob Feller, the only man ever to pitch a no-hitter on opening day. What do you remember about that game?
Well, it was a cold day in Chicago. I remember I had pitched on Saturday. I pitched against the Giants in Cleveland, 5 innings, allowed 10 runs and 15 hits, and I never ever have a good spring. I knew I had my stuff. I felt strong. My dad and mother and sister came in there from Iowa, from where I'm from, right near Des Moines, Van Meter, Iowa, and they saw that ball game. And it wasn't all that large a crowd. It was a very cool, raw, cloudy day. The temperature at game time was about 45 degrees. It got cooler as the game went on. And I didn't have great stuff. I struck out 8, walked 5. I did have good stuff, but it wasn't overpowering like it was in the day a no-hitter against the Yankees immediately after World War II, 6 years later. And I pitched many a game with better stuff, but I had my average stuff, my good live fastball and good sharp curve. But that day I was not really throwing the ball as good as I could, but it was good.
You had 12 one-hitters, too. That's a record. Could any of those have been no-hitters?
Well, there were several plays that could have been a couple plays that the umpire could have called them at either way at first base. And, there were involved in this. There was a couple of swinging bunts that if I were a better fielder, I could have thrown the man out. I was not that great a fielder. There were a couple plays, one of them in Cleveland against the Tigers, that the outfielder misjudged a fly ball. One in St. Louis for an outfielder misjudged a fly ball. One where Boudreau, our shortstop and manager, misjudged a little pop-up. And because of the wind, in a couple of the cases, the wind wasn't all that bad, but this misjudged fly balls, and in particular one with Boudreau misjudged in Chicago. He said, I got it. And the wind was blowing very hard, like it can blow in Comiskey Park, and the ball blew it over his head into short left field. And then he said, take it. And he looked around for the outfielder, who was Pat Siri. And Siri was standing there waiting for Boudreau to catch it, and it was too late for him to extend his hands to catch the ball. And there were others that were close. There were some line drives, of course, and the no-hitters I got that were caught or hit right at the players. And a good play was made by Ray Mack on my no-hitter in Chicago opening day at second base to keep the ball from going into right field. A tremendous play. Boudreau made a tremendous play on a high hopper over the mound, and was a leadoff man, Snuffy Sternweiss, in New York, and the no-hitter in Yankee Stadium, which was the first no-hitter ever pitched against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. In fact, only one's been pitched there since. That was by Virgil Trucks in 1950, and I pitched mine in 46. And that stadium's been open a long time. It was open in 1923.
I read somewhere, maybe you can confirm this, that it was on Mother's Day, your mom was at the game, and she got hit by a foul ball, and you went into the stands to check on her, and then went back out and struck out the batter. Any truth to that story?
That was on Mother's Day, 1938. In fact, Paul Harvey had it on his syndicated radio show recently, about a couple months ago. In fact, one of my sons heard it in Chicago, actually, where Paul Harvey is, and another of my sons heard it down in Florida. And it did happen, and I did hit my mother right in the eye. She was sitting behind first base. Jackie Hayes was the hitter, swung late at a fastball, and she was right there in the front row by the Cleveland box, and dugout, hit her right in the eye, and took some stitches, a lot of blood, and she had a couple of black eyes. I did go over and check on her. The trainers and doctors came there. Never knocked her unconscious, as a matter of fact. And she did have some a few problems with the headaches, but eventually it did not cause any trouble, but a couple of scars. And it's ironic that it was on Mother's Day, and there were about 30,000 people there. A beautiful day. I did finish the ball game, and I don't recall if I struck out the hitter or not. That's possible.
Okay, Bob Feller is our guest on the pregame show tonight, and we'll be back with him right after these words. Bob, how about as you look at the players today and the money that they make, what are your thoughts about free agency?
Well, free agency, of course, was brought in there by Marvin Miller, and I think if a player is in an organization for probably 8 or 9 years, in which most of them are, and with 2 or 3 years in the minors and 6 in the big leagues, if you can't get along with the organization, or you can't reach an agreement after that time, I think a free agency is desirable. Of course, I was always, when I was a player representative, I was always for the players and the club owners equally selecting and electing and paying for the commissioner's office, take nothing to court, take the matter to arbitration, and stay out of the courts. And that could have eliminated free agency. And, of course, it's the same thing now as arbitration in certain ways, except it's a means of arbitration now. Of course, the player asks for a certain amount, the club offers a certain amount, and there's no medium ground. The pendulum swings either one way or the other. And that's rather ridiculous, but there was a reason for it, just like now that football has some competition for their players with the other league. And baseball players got a great pension plan to make a lot of money. I say that the players now get what they deserve and what they earn, and we didn't during my time. But we do know that some players are paid more than they're worth, and so are some school teachers, and some are not paid what they're worth. And it's a matter of supply and demand. It's just something that's going to be arguable forever.
At its peak, what was your fastball clocked at?
My fastball was clocked at peak. As I released the ball after it came out of my hand, within about 2 or 3 feet of my fingertips, was 117.2, and the speed at home plate was 98.6, and the average speed was between 107 and 8 in my prime.
How did you pitch Ted Williams?
I try to keep the ball up and in on Ted, throw sliders on his fist, and overhand fastball, try to make Ted hit the ball in the air, keep it inside so he couldn't get the big part of the bat on the ball. If he pitched him outside, he could hit the ball out of the park in any direction. He could pull if he wanted to. You couldn't throw a fastball by him. No one could throw hard enough to throw a fastball by Ted. And he was very tough. He was a great low ball hitter when he first came up, and within a couple of years, he came up in 39. By 1941, he could hit the high fastball as good as he could hit anything. But most of the fellows that tried to pitch a Ted, or of my style, fast overhand fastball, tried to keep it inside so he couldn't get the full power of the bat on it. And if he did, he would pull it foul. But of course, it's easy to talk about and sit here and say that, but to throw the ball with all your speed and through an eye of a needle is not as easy as it might sound.
Joe DiMaggio, how'd you pitch him?
Joe hit me very well. When I learned how to pitch to Joe, finally, after he hit me very well for many years, he came up in 36 the same year I did. And I tried to pitch him inside like I did all the big sluggers, keep it all in on them, and hit them on the small part of the bat, not get it out there on the barrel where they had all the wood and had all that momentum and weight of the bat. And that's a general way a pitcher of my style. I threw Joe a few curveballs, but I would usually throw him fastballs inside and sliders away, and maybe not strikes even, trying to get him to pull the ball, which if he did pull it, and he liked to pull, he'd hit the ball into the ground. But Joe was tougher for me than Ted, but Ted could hit anybody. There's no pitcher that could get Ted out consistently, and there were several pitchers in the league that Joe DiMaggio just had no success against at all. And one of them was Bob Lemon, Mel Harder. Another one on our ball club was Satchel Paige, even though Satchel was over the hill. He had great success with Joe. Not me. Joe hit me quite well until the last couple of years in the league.
John Lippon, the manager of the Alexandria Dukes, said he found you hard to hit against, not only because of your fastball, but because of the high step in your delivery. Was that a natural motion, or did you do that intentionally to throw the batter off?
Well, I had a big wind-up without a man on base, and I did lift my leg quite. I had a lot of motion with my arms and legs, and because I weighed about 180, 83, and not quite 6 foot tall, and to get my entire weight of my body and into the pitch, I had to use a lot of body motion, and it did distract the hitter, and of course that's what I wanted to do.
Bob Feller, one more question. If you had to give any advice to an aspiring pitcher today, what would it be?
I'd say try to hit a spot with the ball, work on your fastball and your control, throw those spots. When you play catch, every time you play catch anyway, try to hit a spot, and pitch a lot of batting practice. Don't try to throw the same as anybody else does. Throw overhand, keep your eye on the spot, take care of your arm, don't put ice on it, keep it warm, wear a shirt down over your elbow at all times, no matter how hot it is. And I know it's kind of messy, but some of the kids do get arm problems because they let their arm get cold, particularly in the early part of the year.
Bob Feller, I want to thank you very much for being our guest on the pregame show tonight, and good luck to you.
My pleasure.
Well, there you have it, my interview with Bob Feller. And again, like I say, This was by a coincidence that I decided to run this interview. Again, I wanted it to coincide with the anniversary of his passing 10 years ago. And lo and behold, the story breaks that the Cleveland Indians are going to do away with their nickname. But you can make a strong case. He was the greatest Cleveland Indian of them all, Bob Feller. And thanks for watching and listening to the latest edition of The Baseball Beat. Visit my website, thebaseballbeat.com, also danlovallo.com. You'll also get to the same website by putting in danlovallo.com. Also, subscribe to my sports newsletter, which I send out 3 times a week, and you can do that by going to sportscasterdan.com. And as always, thank you for your support.